Everyone has this question. I'm sure you heard this like a million times. What was one initiative that you did to get people start swiping their credit cards?
How to really run an enterprise sales motion.
I think it's approaching $1 billion in ARR. The best industry in this moment in time to be a part of.
I just wanted to be in the game, right? In the space. Just trying to understand all the bullshit.
Will software even be needed in the future? Why does attribution suck for you?
It's just hard.
On today's episode of the Growth Journal, we sit down with Dave Dorman, one of the first marketing hires at DigitalOcean, good friend of mine who ran marketing at Grafana as the VP of self-serve and now joined a new startup, Modular, in the AI infrastructure space as the VP, head of marketing there. We're going to dig in deep to understand what drove growth at Grafana, at DigitalOcean, and jam on some of the old tactics and new tactics that we put into place to drive growth, as well as share some ideas and experiments to run for Source to drive growth to Source. The Growth Journal, episode 1, Dave Dorman. Dave, maybe you can give everyone kind of a quick intro on your background and then, talk a little about the DO early days.
Oh yeah, well, thanks for having me. I'm honored to be number one on this podcast. A quick intro myself. Well, Mitch sort of, brought me into DigitalOcean somewhat recently shortly after the Series A to join the marketing org. And I kind of joined as like an amorphous roles. Like it was like a product marketing roles, like the first product marketer. But it was like a mix of all the things, right? Actually, at the time, a lot of the marketers at the time were folks sitting on that marketing org were a lot of technical writers and community focused. There's a little bit less of the growth marketing, demand gen, product marketing, maybe those more typical functions, as they invested really early on, much more in the technical marketing, community marketing, event marketing, et cetera, et cetera. So I joined this role as like a product marketer, but it was a hybrid of everything, right? It was like conversion rate optimization. How do we actually kind of move, I don't want to say up market, but really focus on, instead of just going after developers spending $5-20 a month on nights and weekends, but to actually bring us into their startup, into their business, et cetera. So kind of thinking through that piece. And then sort of whatever else was, on the menu that we needed to do on marketing. So I'm actually just fortunate Mitch and some of the other folks brought me on at that point as the company's really starting to scale. That was my first foray really into DevTools after spending time a little at a prior startup before that. And then I won't go too deep into it, but then after a great run thereafter. That's right. Yeah. So OG New York City people, right? I joined theladders.com in 2008, sort of as the economy was in the shitter. And I thought I was taking a job in marketing as an account manager, but I actually joined like a customer success team and I was like cold calling a bunch of recruiters all day and all night. But I was very fortunate. I just got to like learn who our customers were, both recruiters and job seekers. And I had a great run there over a couple of years across the ecosystem of both consumer marketing and doing B2B, all across the recruiting and agency ecosystem. So I had a breadth of knowledge across those things. Then moved into kind of more like enterprise marketing at an early stage monitoring tool. And then I found my way, fortunately, over at the crew at DigitalOcean, where I ran different parts of marketing for about 5 years, from Series A to a couple dozen $1 million in revenue to hundreds of millions of dollars. And I was just fortunate to be along for the ride with Mitch and some of the crew there. And then I can keep going on from there. You tell me, Mitch.
Yeah, no, I was super impressed watching Dave grow at DigitalOcean, and just, we, for context, I was a co-founder, CMO at DigitalOcean, for those that don't know. And we had a pretty sizable team in the, call it community, on the community team. Content was a core focus. Developer relations was a core focus. Social media, events. And so, Dave came on to really help, mature the marketing organization, to bring in, analytics, to bring in, some processes and demand gen and performance marketing and, and growth, as they call it nowadays, to the marketing org. And so, when Dave started, we really, we did a lot on product marketing, demand gen, and really brought in a lot of like areas of marketing that just didn't exist, and Dave built it from the ground up. So it was awesome to see him grow, and his career has become crazy impressive. I mean, obviously it goes beyond just the DigitalOcean years now. And in fact, I think you actually spent more time in your tenure at your next company than DigitalOcean, which is pretty wild. I think I saw that on LinkedIn that you actually spent more years at Grafana.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, which was pretty shocking, and I feel like pretty rare and very fortunate to be a part of companies that have from product market fit, and then be able to either survive the journey, right, for long enough as the path to success is clearly not straight up, and just kind of be along for like multiple phases of it, right? And I was fortunate at Grafana on that. So I joined Grafana again after 5 years or so at DO. And it was an interesting story. I actually saw when I was at DigitalOcean, one of the most popular one-click images in the marketplace was around Grafana, right? So it was a lot of developers who were running monitoring stacks, whether they're running Prometheus and Grafana as the front end. So I just thought that was fascinating. It was like, oh, what is this popular open source project? I eventually ended up, connecting with some of the founders to learn more. But it was like a kind of insightful, just by having access to like the developer community that was DigitalOcean. And I saw that this open source project was getting a lot of momentum. Like there was something there, right? It was like an ingredient of like lots of inbound interest and awareness. So it was like, one of many, one of the pieces of ingredients I was seeking out as I looked for the next role. And I was fortunate there to spend time figuring out how we take this open source community that was, millions of monthly active users that were using Grafana every month to understand, the health of their systems and applications, and figure out how to actually really monetize it in a PLG way, right? Which was, at the time we were, again, had millions of open source users and we were monetizing a very, very small sliver. Typically those were larger enterprises at the end of the day, right? So when you give away something for free, the market of folks who are actually gonna be willing to pay for it was a little tricky. And we were typically selling like license keys and maybe a prior wave of how we look to monetize. And I was brought in to try and figure out how do we do this self-service product-led growth thing that many other companies had already solved in open source, whether it's companies like MongoDB, Confluent was starting to solve it. A lot of folks at Elastic had sort of solved this transition from on-prem to building a proper SaaS product and monetizing not just the biggest enterprises, but monetizing any teams of developers who need to monitor things. So yeah, I spent 6 years kind of as a single person trying to figure out like, how do we draw people from open source into our SaaS product, to lots of stuff in between, which we'll get into, being part of that company from around 15 million in revenue to about 400 and change above, and growing very quickly.
It's no small number.
A lot of it started from this PLG motion where, it was more of like a bit of a sales-led business at earlier phases. So just an interesting mix of growth marketing, growth product stuff, community, and a few other bits I sort of spent some time going after. So yeah, I was fortunate just to get along at the right time, add some value. And I was fortunate with like an amazing culture to be there for, a little shy of 6 years.
That's wild. And maybe dive in to talk about, I guess, the playbook differences, right? Like when you're at a company and you put in a playbook, a growth playbook or marketing playbook, like it's never the same when you go to the next company. It's just, you can't just copy and paste it. Even as surprisingly, even if the audience is somewhat similar, right? Just the product differences make it challenging. And so maybe talk about how, what were the biggest differences between the two?
Yeah. So like, different eras too, right? Like I think where DigitalOcean found product market fit around the go-to-market side and marketing efforts was, earlier obviously than Grafana. So what worked at Grafana did not work at DigitalOcean and vice versa. So DigitalOcean, as Mitch knows, as he was, at the creation and drove much of it, was writing a lot of the tutorials that DigitalOcean was known for, right? You ask any developer on the street today, what do they know about DigitalOcean? They would think about tutorials and documentation, right? And that was this massive traffic driver for the business, right? Just to get people's attention, help them solve a problem. And then eventually, if not right away, they'll eventually could then consider DigitalOcean for some of their server needs in the future. Whereas when I was at Grafana, like I'll just sort of get to the point, then we'll dig into the details. Grafana, that wasn't quite the case, right? Tutorials wasn't necessarily the thing that was going to work. And we tried some versions of it, and we can talk about some of those for sure. And I'll talk about maybe what are the pieces of the prior playbook I was able to bring along. A lot of the go-to-market that was on the growth side at Grafana was going to be around open source, right? At the end of the day, it was like, we just built a great product for free that we invested lots of time and effort into making the best for the market. And that drove a tremendous top of funnel, right? And then we were able to surround that with lots of things, whether it was, conferences, right? We drove many conferences where people want to talk to us about observability and open source observability, as well as the conferences dedicated around Grafana. So those were like and all the content that would come out of that, right? We were able to bring all that together. And that was one of the major drivers for us. We think about like the very, very top of the funnel. So one was around to write the best tutorials and documentation on the internet. It was the right time at the right place that beat everyone else. And Grafana was the right time and right place after there were lots of closed sourced observability around Datadog, New Relic, Splunk, et cetera. Grafana really led the way around open source observability, going back in those days. And that was like our real wedge into lots of both small teams and enterprises alike. So those two, like, they didn't rhyme with each other, right? For what it's worth. But the part that did was offering value, right? And this is, I guess you could apply this in any part of B2B marketing, but I've spent most of my time in marketing to developers and SREs and a fairly technical audience, was actually like, what is the value you're bringing to the table, right? To capture attention. And actually they will remember you the next time. I remember the stat, it's not precise, but when we were at DigitalOcean, we would drive millions of visitors to all these tutorials, right? How to install MySQL on Ubuntu XYZ. And what we'd see is people wouldn't convert and like sign up for DigitalOcean in that same session. That like was like actually very, very rare. And boy, did we try and ran a tremendous amount of testing to figure out how do we get you to just spin up that MySQL server on DigitalOcean. It was very, very, very rare. But what we would often see is that those within 90 days, the conversion rate against that would be very, very high. So what did that tell us? And I think that's the important part. Like, what did we learn from it? Well, actually that developer was trying to install MySQL at that moment, and this tutorial helped them solve it. Right? So they didn't need a server. They were running it either locally or somewhere else. Could have been a competitor. But now we all have all this goodwill of writing the best possible documentation you could find. And now we were sort of in market the next time they were ever considering something for hosting. And I thought that was like the big takeaway I always had from DigitalOcean was like offer value, right? Like really, really win. And you'll see the gains later. And then you can make that argument. It's the same thing at Grafana, which was really around open source. The thing I loved about Grafana, and it was always repeated from the day I started till one of the days I left, was so one of the mottos was around being long-term greedy, right? So we were a long-term greedy business, and we were very happy to like offer and build open source software and work with the community. And we knew that over time we would be able to, monetize a small sliver of that. And I just think there was something valuable, like how do you offer something to the community, to folks, and eventually that'll pay dividends on the marketing side.
That's awesome. And we think about that top of funnel and like, especially in B2B, like making that top of funnel as wide as possible to create as much awareness and then eventually, leads, right? Or like prospects or users, even if they're just using it for free. So it's like, I guess everyone has this question. I'm sure you heard this like a million times, like at Grafana, like how the hell do you optimize open source? It's like, there's so many dev tool companies out there that are open source, like, and they're trying to monetize. Like, what advice do you give them?
Oof, what do I give them? Well, I'll give them a lot of cliches to start, right? And hopefully I'll be able to give them some good examples. I think one of the things that worked out really well, I think one of the reasons that Grafana was able to have a lot of success, one of many reasons, was we built a tremendous top of funnel through Grafana, the project, right? And just maybe for those who are unaware, Grafana's visualization tool, typically for time series data and observability, right? So, think about other maybe closed source companies like Datadog or in the past New Relic or some others. And Grafana was really just a front end. We were able to plug into all these different databases. So there's actually an ecosystem at play, right? I'll talk about how DigitalOcean also had their own version of this. We'll talk about where that was similar. But they were to ride the waves of the rise of other certain databases. So like as Kubernetes became very popular, so did Prometheus, was the way that in the open source community you were monitoring it. And Grafana became the de facto visualization layer. Mm-hmm. So there was a stack, right? Kubernetes, Prometheus, Grafana. This is a thing that became pervasive across the ecosystem. So I think we did a really good job of capitalizing and hitching our wagon to the right databases and parts of the market. But really where the company started to monetize was we just continued to build and then monetize other databases. So we then built our own version, a long-term store of Prometheus data that was Mimir. We built a logging database that was in Loki, a tracing database in Tempo. So we actually ended up building a proper observability stack with all the signals, and all that was open source as well. But what we were able to do in a very packaged together in our SaaS product was bringing that all together, like very tightly integrated. That was, much more batteries included. The Legos were already put together for you versus having to stitch it together. And that just didn't happen overnight, right? Like that actually was a tricky evolution for the business who was used to building Legos to actually start putting those together for our customers, right? So from taking a very big top of funnel where I spent a lot of my time, was partnering very closely with product and engineering and design of, how do we actually prepackage those Legos for our customers that maybe we're already used to navigating them in open source. So there was this, tailwind we had of a lot of people knew about us. They were actually already familiar with Grafana and some of our databases and the ergonomics of how to use our products, which then made it tricky of how do we actually find the right sets of customers to eventually look to pay us. And I think for us, one of the number one thing is we just continue to pump more and more value into our SaaS product, really started to think about how do we drive more specific marketing to help enable our customers to understand how to use these products, so on and so on and so forth. So we can dig into a lot more there, but I felt like actually zooming out at how, as an open source company, we became to monetize was we actually just weren't a single project. We actually became a suite of projects that we were able to tie together, generally speaking, within our SaaS, within a SaaS product. And it was actually that combination of things that really led to a lot very unique value that we were able to monetize for, again, a very small percentage of a massive funnel. And I think that was always kind of part of the core strategy.
So you had more advanced capabilities like, managed services layered on top, different feature access, SOC 2 compliance, all that.
In the early days, very much it was all the standard stuff like the role-based access control, audit logs, all the types of things. I think that was sort of like, let's say, step one. And I think at least our strategy, and there's been a few other companies that have found ways to, commercialize open source very well, was starting to layer on just like truly building out a differentiated product within Grafana.com. That allowed you to just like integrate across different products better, give you more push button type experiences, right? And again, of course, not having to manage infrastructure. It turns out like companies who build databases, it's hard to run databases yourself at scale. We were able to do that pretty well as a SaaS product. And I think a lot of our marketing and growth marketing efforts were around helping convince our existing user base, where we could do the undifferentiated heavy lifting for you. And I think that we played a large role in trying to convince, again, a very small percent of a very big funnel to, consider using us in a commercial perspective.
Can you share kind of any conversion rates of like, open source to paying or open source to like the first kind of tier plan? Like what was that? How big of a drop off are we talking about? Was it like, 10%, 5%, 2% conversion rate from an open source or free plan user, or what was the?
Yeah, this was always hard, right? Like we always managed, we had telemetry that helped us understand anonymized open source adoption, right? And that number, I think it's like published on the internet in places of just like millions, right, of active users. Right? A user isn't, there can be many users inside of an individual account or company. So, just it's worth considering. And we've also talked out publicly that the company has over 7,000 paying customers. But we also kind of had to look at these separate at the end of the day, right? Like there was like, what is the open source adoption? And then also what are we seeing sort of on our commercialization and SaaS side? It's just like, is not a straight line attribution story. That was always tricky, right? At the end of the day, because again, open source is, people just go and download on the internet. We don't need to log in. We don't collect any information. But we're able to gather various signals one way or the other. And maybe on certain types of companies that are using us, we would look at things like job postings, right? In a good way, we became very pervasive that like having Grafana on your resume or LinkedIn profile was important. I'll give you an example. My wife's a recruiter. She works with lots of other startups and some other large financial organizations. And she was recruiting SREs by coincidence. And at some point after working at Grafana for a while, she was like, I understand, like, why is Grafana and this Loki thing on all these LinkedIn profiles? It's like, well, just like that's the company I worked at. And it turned out it was just a pervasive thing that when companies were hiring folks to work on platform engineering or on the SRE side, Grafana was a skill set, right? Being able to use Prometheus or Loki, et cetera. So that was a long-winded way of saying we were always seeking out various signals to understand who the companies might be so that we can figure out what are the right ways that we can then have a commercial conversation with them. So that conversion was always tricky, right? But it was a reasonably small percentage. And in the best way possible, that was always understood from the business, is that we're not actually here we actually build open source software for both the largest and
so single digit conversion rates at best.
Yeah, I can't it was always very small.
Yeah.
But it was also by design.
It's fine. You don't have to share. It's fine.
But it was also one of those things that the same way at DigitalOcean is that like we were always we always had to know that if we were playing the numbers game, if they're not like, sometimes we're looking for a very high conversion rate as marketers on certain things, right? And then there are things where it's like, well, if we can get a big enough numerator, we're willing to live with a fraction of a very big number. And then there's all these things that come along with it, right? Which we can talk about, both at DigitalOcean, Grafana. At some point, we'll talk about where I'm at now with Modal. But like, what we also see is there's tremendous amounts of folks who come through these funnels, like through the PLG funnel, that are like not necessarily folks you're going to monetize. They're individual developers or SREs or people just tinkering, playing with nights and weekends, hobbyists, whatever it might be. And then how do we think about that? That was always a tricky balance, both when we were at DigitalOcean and Grafana, of like, who are we trying to monetize at the end of the day? We can talk a little more about that. It was different at DigitalOcean than at Grafana.
And just so the audience knows, like, the difference between PLG, because that's the term we're going to be throwing around quite frequently. PLG stands for product-led growth, where the basically product sells itself and drives self-serve adoption, basically without talking to any sales rep or any individual to help convert them and onboard them. And then on the flip side, you have PLS, which is product-led sales, where the product will basically bring the person in for like a demo or for like a free trial, and then eventually, like a salesperson would then convert that individual and upsell them and convert them into an enterprise contract potentially. Would you say that Grafana was pure PLG, or do you feel like it also has like a little bit of a PLS motion to it?
Yeah, so Grafana is a fascinating business because it was an open source company, right? So massive distribution for free. And we typically monetize as a SaaS product, like most other B2B companies. Then we had a freemium version of our SaaS, of that product, right? And then obviously your ability to then transact in a self-service way with a credit card, and then a large enterprise sales team. So Grafana in many ways was product-led growth in that the product drove all the growth, open source. We gave it away for free and tremendous amounts of people would use it.
So you don't believe in the PLG, PLS hybrid description?
Oh, no. So let me get there. All
right,
so
I'll let you cook.
In one sense, Grafana's a complicated business in the way that I think has led it to be very, there was multiple different routes to market, I think is what we sort of saw, in that it was like, I think acquisition awareness-wise was very PLG, I would argue. Actually, the way we monetized for a long time was really around sales-led or product-led sales, for sure. We had, an enterprise sales motion that was fantastic. It was my first time really seeing up close, like how to really run an enterprise sales motion. And my boss for a long time, Dave Kranowitz, was just a killer, as good as anyone I've ever seen. When it came to this motion, I was fortunate to learn from him. So I saw us be able to do both these things well. A lot of my job there was to figure out, to be this bridge. How do we drive more of that self-service, or in old school ways, the e-commerce part of the business? How do you let the lower end of the market or smaller teams, in a very economical way for the business, to transact on their own, swipe a credit card, spend $5 a month, or spend $500 grand a month, in certain circumstances. And then when it makes sense, when do we layer a human on top that's going to add value, either unblock things for them, help them transact in a different way, whatever it might be. So we actually had an interesting evolution in the business that we were, very PLG from an open source perspective, how we got awareness, to was fairly sales led in many ways across, especially larger enterprises. And over probably the last 24, 36 months I was there, was really trying to figure out how do we, build a more modern motion of this more product PLG sales motion, where let people come in, spend money on their own, scale on their own, and then find the right places to interject the right salesperson, or maybe more technical solutions engineer, and grow them in a little more sales assisted way. So we were kind of doing a bit of all the above at Grafana, which is, again, is a little different than maybe what I'm seeing here, and way different than some of the motion when we were at DigitalOcean. I think that's an interesting one to kind of spend a second on as well.
Can you share with the audience just like what was maybe one kind of tactical initiative that you did to help create that bridge, to get people start swiping their credit cards and activate on the marketing side? What was an example?
Yeah, so there were a few things. We went on a journey. By the way, I'm telling all these things in the Food Network version, that I'm just getting it right to the solution. And we were in the wilderness on a bunch of these things, right? One was, we did this when I first joined. There was no free trial or freemium version, right? It was you either used open source or you swiped a credit card and got going, and that was fine, right? But it was hard to scale. We eventually started doing a time box free trial for 30 days, and that required a credit card. And that was actually really bad for a lot of reasons. And we can sort of talk about why it just didn't work for us. And then we moved to a freemium model where we effectively let you use the product for free with certain limitations. And then after a certain point, if you hit the number of users or the amount of gigabytes you'd send to our back end,
And that worked way better.
you'd have to then, for us, and it was a long-term greedy way, right? Because it worked way better over the long run. It was actually, we sacrifice customers maybe in the short term by not like forcing them to move into our paid product if they were at small scale. But it compounded over time, right? So then what happened is over many years, we ended up having tens of thousands of monthly active users on our free plan, our SaaS free plan. And then we would start to see a small percentage of those convert every month, right? As they would start to hit some of their limits, or whatever it might be. But I think for us also, just to go to a slightly different rabbit hole, because we were marketing to developers and SREs, what we often found is we wanted to give folks like an always on opportunity to use our product, and not just like, oh, I have a proof of concept, I need to solve this problem now, let me go sign up. By the way, everyone wants that. Everyone wants to have this high value, high intent customers ready to come and deploy something for real. That's what every marketer wants, every salesperson wants. But we had a long-term strategy of, we're going to always give you this free account. It's limited in what you could send to us or how much you could do. But like, you could always play around. If you were a developer on nights and weekends, you could instrument, and monitor your home thermostat with Grafana and just get the feel for the use of the product. So when you needed a new logging solution for some new application or pick a thing, you already were familiar with Grafana. And I think that was the type of game we always played. So moving to a freemium model ended up being the right long-term strategy for us.
That's awesome.
And we tried a few different things. They didn't work as well.
That's awesome. That's super helpful. Maybe talk about kind of your new company. You just joined a new company. You're the VP of growth and marketing at Modal. You want to talk about just what Modal does and, that the company and what you're tasked with?
Yeah. So I'm 2 weeks in, almost exactly. I joined Modal after 6 years being remote. Now I'm back in the office, and it's been a great change of pace. It was like actually what I think I was seeking, sort of sitting in my attic for 6 years, generally speaking.
I can just imagine you in the attic, a dark attic.
Yeah. To be clear, it was a very nice. It was a very nice attic. It was fully finished. But there was like a very thin line of where the I know some of your background comes in the home building business, but like there was a very thin line between myself and the outside world, and that always kind of gave me like a weird sense of claustrophobia being in the office. But we could save that for another time.
Hopefully there was enough ceiling.
So yeah, I joined Modal.
Dave's tall. I think he's 6'1", so.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the camera doesn't swipe. 6'2", 6'3". So I joined Modal. And listen, what we do is we provide AI infrastructure for developers, right? So there's a new wave that is going on since the release of large language models, of how not every company nowadays, if you're a developer, when you're going to build these, generative AI applications or whatever it might be, they are not architected in the same way they were in the past when it's all said and done. So there's a sea change in how developers are building software. You sort of see it, both on like actually how they're building it, whether they're using Cursor, but also like sort of what sits at the core of it. And generally speaking, it's companies, building and maintaining models and needing to get them in front of customers. And as a result, it sort of changed what the infrastructure is needed. Now, granted, everyone has probably paid close enough attention to NVIDIA and what's going on in the markets for all the investment here. And Modal plays in the space that we're a software layer, like an abstraction that sits across like global pools of GPUs. So we make it easy for developers in a very serverless way. We don't have to manage servers to actually go and train models, do inference, which is actually serving those models out to your end customers, and do things around like batch processing. So we sell to a fairly technical audience of machine learning engineers and AI engineers, typically those that are sitting on a little more of the cutting edge and are building applications at scale. So we've got some of the most well-known products in the world that sit with Modal, running inference and training at the heart. Like Suno is one of those companies. Companies like Lovable, Ignition. There's just like the laundry list of name your favorite AI product. Modal might be living somewhere in that pipeline, as well as some maybe more traditional businesses that are running lots of machine learning pipelines. So that's a little bit what we do. One of the reasons I joined was, and by the way, this is just, I'm biased because I was fortunate to sit through some of these journeys. Two areas that have seemingly monetized well across all of recent software from the 90s and beyond, is infrastructure. Like people kind of always need a server or something to run. Like code needs to run somewhere. And those companies have done very well. DigitalOcean was the prime example of it, right? If you could capture 1% of a $100 billion run rate market at that point, which was like, virtual machines running in the cloud, you could build $1 billion run rate business, right? I saw that. I didn't realize it when I first joined you, Mitch, many years ago, of how big it could get. And you actually were always unbelievably optimistic it would be there. But I learned that lesson in a good way.
And by the way, just so you know, like DigitalOcean, I don't know if you saw like the public, comps and updates and stats on the business, but I think it's approaching $1 billion in ARR, which is wild.
Yeah. Wild. So like that was clear to me after seeing that, learning that lesson up close and personal. I was like, oh, in this massive market, and more importantly, that developers need to run code somewhere. And that was one answer. And on the other hand, I was fortunate to spend time at two like monitoring and observability companies. One that was sort of, I joined prior to DigitalOcean for 2 years. And then I was part of Grafana, which to help ensure that code you were running or those servers are up and running. So it turns out developers, IT teams, et cetera, are willing to pay to run the software, make sure the software runs, ensure it stays up. So again, bias, I just happen to see those two spaces do very well. And it felt like Modal sort of sit right at the perfect intersection in this next wave of infrastructure build out. The developers are going to need the right things to both train models, run inference on it, and then do a lot of the pipeline work around it. So like just as a space, that was super interesting to me, just to understand maybe where the upside is. But really the first thing was I got a chance to meet the founders, Eric and Akshat, and it was clear these were just guys that really knew what they were doing. Eric's like pretty credited, is widely credited, and he's got a good Twitter personality in machine learning circles for helping create the original Spotify recommendation algorithm. So like he already had a fan base around him and looked up to him. So he had like deep domain expertise, as well as Akshat was very early on Scale AI and had just like been in the space and again, understood his domain extremely well. So it was clear that like there was a space that had a lot of upside, founders who really understood what they were doing. And then the third piece, which, just being an observer of some of this, there was like very clearly 1,000 true fans, a lot more than that. All right. There was like a deeply passionate early community of folks who loved Modal. And more importantly, like the right abstraction that the company presented, right? It wasn't access to underlying servers, right? It is a serverless environment. And actually just all the very specific decisions that were made for if you were a Python developer to get your code running locally and have it run up on the cloud was magic, right? So like these were all ingredients, interesting space that was going to be growing very, very quickly. Founders who really understood the domain and this like magical moment, right? And I saw a lot of these things rhymed were not the same as what I think was working at DigitalOcean when I joined, I don't know, in 2012.
Themes.
To Grafana. Yeah, they was just, how do you find ingredients? Like, I don't know. Like, I want to spend my next 6 years here too. And I, hopefully these were the right ingredients,
Sounds like it. Also sounds like you picked, probably the best industry in this moment in time to be a part of, AI.
Hopefully.
I don't think it's going away anytime soon with the amount of money that's being poured into the industry and invested from like OpenAI and Microsoft and Amazon and DigitalOcean now. Like even DigitalOcean has fully pivoted to GPU AI focused, cloud infrastructure. Yep. So it's like, it's obvious like this is a major transformation and shift happening in the world. So kudos to you for finding an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And, for me, it was those bits, but I also just kind of wanted to be in the game, right? I think I saw this as well going on at Grafana, and even where the success of Grafana was going for the AI products we were building. I think I just wanted to be in the game, right? In the space. I think that was important.
And in the office too. And in the office.
In the office, in all seriousness.
With real human connection.
That separation.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. Lord knows I need it. Danielle, I made a joke to a few folks about my wife was working remotely as well. So the two of us has been home together for 6 years, and she was just like done with me being in it. Like, you always know when someone else is in the house. Well, we got along well. It's just like the water cooler talk wasn't for her. I needed that.
Dave likes to talk, so it's understandable.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that attracted me to Modal was just like I wanted to go down the rabbit hole, and I thought that was super fascinating, right? Like I thought I knew, I was a growth PM earlier in my career, and then I wanted to go work in enterprise software, being like, oh, I know developers. And boy, did I learn I knew nothing about developers, right? That was actually, it turns out it was very exciting for me to go down the Wikipedia rabbit hole, going back in the day on it, right? And it was the same thing when I joined Grafana. I was like, I didn't really know that much about observability, and I found that rabbit hole to learn more and be able to like comprehend that space and build a good mental model of it. And I think that's what I was also seeking here in joining Modal, was just to like, just go further down, the AI rabbit hole. Unfortunately, ChatGPT is an unbelievable tutor. So I've been able to spend a lot of time just kind of learning about the space, figuring out what we do. That's kind of, I don't know, we can maybe talk about, how am I thinking about spending time in the early days here. But I think, sort of number one on the list is just developing a strong point of view on like who we are, where we sit, what we do, et cetera.
How often do you use ChatGPT nowadays?
I'd say a lot. I mean, just like this, in similar ways to other people, I kind of use it instead of search in some places. But at work, I'll find myself, whether I'm commuting or if I'm at home, whether it's here or in my prior role, instead of like taking a one-on-one with folks or like having a one-on-one to talk through something, I'll just like kind of chat through it, like in voice mode with ChatGPT, to just like get my thoughts out there. So especially when I'm like scattered, right? Like a lot of times, if I'm overwhelmed or I'm not quite sure even how I feel about a topic or if I understand it, I'll just kind of like talk to it and ask it to transcribe, and then maybe come back and ask it to summarize, put this in logical paths. It's like a very good way for me personally, who like thinks out loud, generally speaking, right? And that's how I sort of think through ideas. It's been a great companion for those types of things. So I don't have to bother someone else, right? Sort of take my baggage and put that on them, maybe waste their time. So that's one way I use it pretty often, a couple of days a week, is maybe like having like a 15, 20 minute conversation with it, even just to sort out my ideas, or to maybe go down a certain rabbit hole that if I'm trying to like understand a very specific topic about maybe what we're doing here at Modal. So I use it a lot for things like that. First editing around copy. It's like all the things like words.
How supportive are you? This is like a very taboo kind of like question, but like how supportive are you of like encouraging your team, your marketing team, to like use ChatGPT and like AI tools?
It was a thing we tried pushing on a lot at Grafana. I think we wanted people to explore what was there, right? Just to be clear, I think we like really wanted to explore what was there. And also like two sides of it. Well, there's one thing about using ChatGPT, and then there was the other of like, cool, like, well, how can we better personalize all of our emails, as an example, that we were doing, like, that came through our self-serve funnel? And then how do we stitch together the right tools to find the best way to do that? And the reality was, so we actually did it, especially on my team, we invested lots of time to figure out how to do those types of things, right? Like, and it was sometimes not that interesting, just to be frank, right? It would be actually fairly take up a lot of time. And maybe the results weren't all that interesting if we were just going to do a series of 15 if-then statements on doing a bunch of personalized email. Having said that, I think if we didn't go down the rabbit hole and even figure out where it's interesting and uninteresting, I think we'd be worse set up for the future. So I think, at least I can speak for myself and my team, we often wanted to make the trade-off. Be like, cool, go down the rabbit hole, figure this stuff out, see if there's something interesting here. A lot of times there wasn't. But then I think actually the next thing we can go faster. Or we actually know we can maybe stay away from spending a lot of time going down this AI LLM rabbit hole where, cool, like we probably could have just wrote a series of, 3 or 4 if-then statements. Like that was often, I think, how we talked about it. My bigger qualm often was that like when we would try and push down, top down, like, hey, like you should use the AI tools, use the tools. We would just get a lot of AI slop, and like people just like wouldn't think. They just like write something to put in front of me, and I'd have to like review some product requirements document, and it would consume a lot of my mental energy. It's like just trying to understand all the bullshit that I was seeing from ChatGPT. And it was like clear the other person didn't put, the actual human thought against it. And if they read it, they would have realized this is like overly circular and confusing. So, I don't know. It was a bit of a non-answer. It's like, yes, I think we were pushing it down for folks to use it. And I think it became very standard part of most people's workflow. But like some of the trade-offs here were trying to figure out generally where were we seeing lift. And there were a bunch of places we could talk about it. But then we were also finding spots where it actually became like a.
So what was a couple examples of those lifts? Like, what were some lifts?
Some of them ended up being in this world as well, where we were able to like automate, certain emails as an example, right? And we were able to then put in the right set of resources, a lot of, and do it on an ongoing basis. Mm-hmm. So that was one. like honestly, a lot of times it would help us in the early days of just write better copy for a range of different use cases.
Yep.
And then we could do the series of if-then statements. And I think that was actually like the part of where in the supply chain did we interject the LLMs was the question. Was it like upfront to write the copy? Was it literally doing it on the fly, personalized for, tens of thousands of monthly signups? Like, turns out that was not like, for a variety of reasons, wasn't that interesting. But like upfront, that was actually great, right? Just as a tactical example. We were able to use it for a bunch of recommendations around lead scoring.
Mm-hmm.
It was maybe less LLMs, but we were just using some basic machine learning models there. Those were a few, just to name. I think we were still on a journey of seeing where the real unlock was.
Did you have like
other than just like better copy,
like a PQL, product qualified lead definition at Grafana, or like say SQL, or like what was kind of the funnel description?
Yeah, we used all the
terms.
QLs for a while. All the QLs.
All the QLs.
And I was all the QLs. So yes, we named them a bunch of different things, and we sort of evolved it over the course of time. And honestly, like I first jumped down this path at DigitalOcean when we were trying to do similar types of things of like, how are we going to identify the customers that are going to break out, right? And what is the motion we can put against them? Whether it's a customer success person, solutions architect style person, which was better fit at DigitalOcean back in the day, maybe versus a pure salesperson. And we spent a lot of time actually working on that, right? And we could talk about what some of the signals were there. And then I was able to try and figure out how do we take that playbook and run it when we were at Grafana. And there were a few things that stood out actually across both. I'll actually start on the inverse, right? The contrarian one was actually the things that look like people rapidly growing was actually usually a negative signal. Like at Grafana, when we saw people massively spike up in ingestion, many times, most of the time, we saw there was actually a negative signal because it might have been maybe something was misconfigured. They maybe didn't understand how pricing worked, whatever it might be. And then we saw the same thing at DigitalOcean, right? It might have been someone doing something scammy. It was raw infrastructure, so people were doing all sorts of wacky things, right? So we would actually see this like very quick burst actually be a negative signal, right? Where we actually wasted a bunch of people's human time on it, trying to jump on a call when there was actually maybe not a very large opportunity there. So I think that was like the one that any maybe salesperson or someone looking at this for the first time was like, go after the people rapidly scaling. The answer is, of course, we should look at them and figure out what to do, but we should have reasonable expectations about what's going to happen from there. It was always hard, Mitch, over years at DigitalOcean and then at Grafana, convincing people that was true, right? Because on the surface, it's like, wow, this customer went from 1 to 20 grand in a month, in 3 days. This is the hottest lead in the world. Again, in consumption-based businesses, that isn't always true, right? I think there are some exceptions, and there always were, and there were amazing winners we found in there, but that was like the 20% of the time. So that was like one, right? So we did a bunch of things across both companies that were like, let's pick very specific signals or triggers, and we'll call it a PQL or a qualified lead or something. Yep. Sometimes it was like, hey, I need to raise my limits. At DigitalOcean, people had default limits. Hey, I need a limit greater than 25 droplets. That was the obvious one, right? Grafana, we did the same thing. Hey, I need to increase. It was the trigger. And then what happens is, and everyone goes to this, all of a sudden you have like 5 triggers, 8 triggers. And then you're like, there's too many triggers. There's too much complexity. Let's build a machine learning model that predicts it for us. And then what happens is that becomes too much of a black box. Well, why the hell are these people being considered qualified leads? And all of a sudden you're missing context. And then even further, you tell me if we want to go down this path, we end up running into these challenges in consumption-based businesses, whether it's DigitalOcean or Grafana or Modal. Are we just predicting the people who would spend money anyway? And how do we think about compensation for salespeople when they're going to spend that money anyway? I remember sitting in Ben's office in DigitalOcean and him just like being like, well, weren't they going to spend this money anyway? How do we know we're not happy? Like, are we going to get lift by engaging with these customers and putting an expensive resource on it? And then I had the same conversation at DigitalOcean, and I'm sure I'll have the same conversation here. And that is like the interesting balancing.
Ben was the CEO of DigitalOcean, for those that don't know.
Oh yeah, so forgive me.
No, I always try to give context. It's important.
Yeah,
for the new audience listener. So just going back to, I mean, that's all super helpful, and like going back to the AI conversation for just a quick sec. Like, it sounds to me like you're an advocate for it in terms of like upfront kind of like content, copywriting, probably like you said, strategizing, building out better, a better process, planning, all that, to kind of set the, call it 80% of the way there template. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, very much so. Especially when it came to, copywriting for us. Like, yeah, needing to develop the assets, I think it was like a tremendous place for us.
By the way, imagine DigitalOcean had imagine ChatGPT existed for DigitalOcean when we were writing all those tutorials.
Or maybe the tutorials wouldn't have been as successful because all of a sudden everyone would have been going to all the answer engines on this stuff, right?
Correct.
I haven't looked at what's going on at DigitalOcean now in 2025 from an SEO perspective. I imagine that world has changed dramatically.
Or it's shifted. Like the traffic has now shifted to where, it's coming from ChatGPT now. But the question becomes, they're asking the question ChatGPT, and ChatGPT is giving them the how-to tutorial instructions without having to click on anything. So, but the question becomes will they cite the sources with links in there? But then unfortunately, no one's clicking on those links or seeing the, but maybe you'll see the DigitalOcean.com in it. I don't know.
Yeah. I haven't called with anyone in a while. I'd be curious to see how that's going. I imagine there's a lot of that going on for sure. But I imagine it must be hard doing analytics there right now and watching the traffic change.
Oh yeah. And just drop it off a cliff.
Yeah. Just looking at every other company who is really reliant on massive scale inbound traffic from an SEO strategy, they've definitely had to evolve one way or the other.
Yeah, no, I advise, consult, various startups and, GEO it's called, generative engine optimization, I believe is the term. And it's basically, optimizing for LLMs and making sure that your company and your website appear at the top of whatever search, prompt they're looking for, related tools to what you're building. And there's just a tremendous amount of demand for that right now. No one has a answer or a solution that actually works. There's some ideas you need great documentation, you need great help guides, you need, API docs, all that, but it's still kind of TBD. It'll be interesting to see if one day ChatGPT comes out with its own ad platform where, the ad platform, offers the free version of ChatGPT and you just, it's like watching YouTube ads. If you don't want to watch YouTube ads, you sign up for the premium. It'll be interesting to see if there's anything there down the road.
Yeah. They're going to have to do a bunch of things to get to hundreds of billions of dollars in revenues. There'll be something.
It might be one solve for them, right? Who knows? Ad revenue might be coming. Are you hiring, by the way? Are you hiring now at your current company?
We are. We're hiring across a range of things. Just jumping in seat and trying to get a feel for what we want to do on the growth and marketing team. I think one of the first orders of business is bringing on someone in the DevRel space, maybe one or two people sort of. And because I think for us, it's important to figure out how we write and build very strong technical content written by the end consumer of who would be using Modal, right? So finding someone who spent some time in machine learning circles, right? Either writing and or talking about it is really, really critical for us. So I think that's one of my first orders of business is figuring out how we just continue to add more muscle to that internally. Because that's a key part of the strategy here at Modal is just we have a tremendous amount of credibility, just given, some of the content we put out, how we talk about ourselves. We're a strong contributor to the space, and people take us seriously as a result. So I think it's really critical from a brand perspective, which I know we took unbelievably seriously back in the day at DigitalOcean. How do we continue to maintain that credibility and push the boundary? And I think for us, it's going to be, very, very technically minded folks to help us continue to create content here across a range of things. So that's, I think, priority number one for me. Again, but about 10 days in, so we shall see.
Okay. Well, definitely hit up Dave if you're interested in a job, and you're a marketer that excels in content. Dave's hiring.
Yeah, content. And I think we'll be looking at some point around things like GTM engineering, go-to-market engineering, trying to help some folks help us think about, how we're driving the marketing to sales motion of how do we identify leads, enrich them, score them, put them through nurtures, automate, do the AI SDR component, or
the ops work,
like,
the operations. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's an area that we'll, we're thinking, we're going to want to continue to invest further in.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So we're going to jump into the next segment of the show, which is probably, it's going to be probably one of the more exciting parts of this, this podcast series, which is to basically jam on some ideas in real time and think through kind of some tactical ideas that we're actually going to put into place. So I'm actually going to take some of my own kind of like personal capital and test these ideas to see if they work or not. So, and listen, there's no right or wrong answer. There's no bad ideas. If it fails, it fails. It's all good. You just buy me dinner next time I see you. And
I was going to do that anyway. I owe you a lot. Anyway.
So this next part of the show is to jam my ideas to basically grow Source. And just for context, Source is a revenue attribution product that that I'm building. It's a startup. It's bootstrapped, and we're fixing a serious problem in the marketing world, specifically the B2B marketing world and B2B growth world, which is attribution. Very hard to do. We were talking about how it's becoming more difficult to track, traffic through LLMs and how fragmented that world has become. So, in real time, we're going to chat through ideas and think about different tactics to basically implement, and then basically use Source to track the results. And then on a future episode, we're going to do a retro and see if it worked or not. And the idea is, again, we're gonna present the charts. We're gonna present if it worked or not when we started it. If it's growing, we'll blog about it. We'll talk about it, and maybe there will be like a winner. At the end of the the first 100 episodes or 50 episodes or something, where maybe there'll be like the best growth idea gets whoever picked the idea gets like a car or something, like a Ferrari. I don't know. So it'll be interesting. We'll have to come up with like a good reward idea or something like that, or maybe Jets season tickets. For Dave.
The problem is you're trying to give those away.
They're an amazing franchise.
Tough life. They really are. It's the bottom of the barrel.
They'll be back one day.
That's what they've been saying for the last 14 years, Mitch.
I'm a Giants fan, by the way, so I can't really talk, but I feel good about a quarterback.
It's not that much easier.
So let's.
If you're going to be giving away Ferraris, then I'm glad that I'm going first. So at least I can get some of the obvious ideas out of the way.
You actually are in the best position right now to win, in my opinion, because you don't have to worry about overlapping ideas. The world is your oyster. You have to come up with anything that's fresh, top of mind, and just go for it. So I'll let you drive the beginning part of it. And again, just to kind of prime it a little bit more, like, we're in public beta right now. We will have like a paid version coming out soon. So there's no paying product, paid version yet. We will have SOC 2 and ISO, and it will be, and we'll have more advanced capabilities, but right now it's still in public beta. But nonetheless, we want to bring in more design partners, more beta users, and that's the goal. And then obviously as the company evolves and as the company grows, the stakes will be raised.
Awesome. And so to kick it off, the types of things, like, I don't know, man, when I met you 12 years ago, something like along those lines, 11, 12 years ago, be like, cool. Like, all right, to dig in, it's, hey, like, who do you think the audience is? Like, is it like super small teams that just like need analytics that can turn on? Is it someone that's going to sit inside something larger? Is it, tell me, like, how do you think about that? What's the early hypothesis there, so we can
the ICP, the ideal customer profile. So I think it's, our hypothesis is that it's a B2B SaaS company that is leaning more into like PLG. So this is very relevant to this conversation. That's spending, call it anywhere between, 25,000 a month to, maybe 200, 300,000 a month in marketing. So that could be like a, growth leader, marketing leader, even some like, co-founders that own marketing, and they're still like Series A, I'd say maybe like even like Series A to Series C, somewhere in that range.
Yep. Makes sense. A couple things on my mind before, as we get into the tactics, it's like, well, maybe at that stage, I'd be maybe thinking about, so there's like the HubSpots of the world that like are the all-in-one, right? You're going to get like analytics out of the box. It's tied to the CRM. So it's like, could be tricky to compete with maybe super early on. Like the wedge for HubSpot users may be tricky because it's kind of an out-of-the-box analytics.
Yep.
But, I'd be thinking about like some of the other, like all these like AI modern CRMs. There's like, I think was it like Day.ai, Adio. Like there's a lot of these like people who are kind of early in their B2B world and they're maybe not ready for Salesforce or something yet. But those things aren't coming out of the box with all sorts of web analytics in particular, right? So those are the folks that are sort of stitching together a few different tools, and feels like that's maybe like in the very early days, some of the interesting product market fit y'all find. Is that, I don't know, how would you?
That is correct. So we integrate with HubSpot, soon to be Adio. We integrate with Salesforce.
Cool.
And the whole idea is that the attribution that we provide is going to be much more detailed. You're also going to get like a full customer lifecycle view of like from the multi-touch journey of like all the different sources that the person went through, when they arrived to your website. When they arrived to your website, all the different pages that they went through before they eventually click to sign up and convert. And basically, once they convert, then all that attribution data is attached to that contact, and you see their journey through the funnel from MQL to SQL to PQL, whatever you want to call it, all the way down to closed. And when they're closed, then you get to kind of attribute the revenue, the LTV by channel, all that, so where your best customers, your revenue's coming from, all the way from the top of funnel. And
that's right.
Unfortunately, like HubSpot and the CRMs, they just like they're not offering that. They don't. That's not their focus.
And the people operate like paying closest to the analytics are like not tuning any of those things to get it right. It's just like it's not like the main purpose. All right. So number one, like as a campaign, it's attribution sucks. Everyone knows it. Everyone resonates with it. Attribution sucks, but everyone needs it. So like I would be leaning hard into this, like something, that would like gather attention. Like attribution sucks. And like, I don't know where you're going to put that. Like you can run a bunch of billboards about that somewhere interesting in SF. You could sit there and do it out in Miami. You got
this test is going to be expensive.
Like pick the market, just attribution. Hey, if you're paying out Ferraris, I figured you should start there.
Dave assumes I have deep pockets. I mean, it's okay. It's okay.
Bootstrap with DigitalOcean.
Billboards in San Francisco. I love it. No, I love it. But I love the tagline. I think attribution sucks is great.
But attribution sucks. That's the no thing. It's like attribution sucks. Everyone knows it. Yet everyone's like, it's important. Everyone, like, no one's willing to admit, be like, well, it's hard to track and word of mouth. Like, no. Like, it is not an excuse to be a B2B market, to be in B2B and not have a good handle on attribution. And it mostly sucks, right? So I think there's like an opportunity to grab attention that way, right? Whether it's through ads in the maybe more typical way, as you find and expand on product market fit, throwing those billboards out there as an example. But I think there is something about like attribution sucks. And there's like, you could like think about a theme of, like a campaign around those bits and just to talk about why, like everyone realizes it sucks. It's not clear that the people get why, right? And what are some of the challenges? I was talking to one of the guys on here at Modal on the analytics front. We were talking about AdWords, some of the campaigns we've run, et cetera. And like a lot of people just out of the box will use AdWords, like set up a conversion event, right? It's like a sign up or something. And like the data looks good sometimes when you're looking in AdWords for it, but you actually need to connect it all the way end to end to the back of your system. And like, frankly, tons of companies that I've engaged with that are early in particular, don't spend the effort to actually figure out how they're going to connect all that spend data, all the data coming out there to the back end to actually look at not just the sign up, but like, where in the funnel are they? Did they pay? Is there an opportunity tied to it? All the things that you're describing. So I just wanted this is a real pain point that I think people sort of miss these nuances. They get it when you talk to them. So I think you've got a good opportunity to talk to people, attribution sucks, and then be able to get into why. And then I think there's a few things you're already doing, but maybe how do you scale it is like bringing on the practitioners and sitting here talking about it, whether it be on a long form podcast. Like we can talk about attribution day in and day out. I think you could be starting your newsletter that's getting into all these details around attribution, right? One way or the other, sort of thinking through top to bottom.
Yep.
You've already got a following on LinkedIn, so I think you're already trying to go after and expand on that, right? And I'm like kind of going to the extreme, even though I'm not sure it's right. Is you'll be known for attribution sucks, and it's only through source do we help solve that problem.
I love that.
So that's one thing, one theme. The tactics are that's the part. It's the answer is you're going to need to try them all, which is figure out how do you start building the audience that is a newsletter. First party stuff I think still matters. I think you're already doing the right thing on the podcast. It's bring on people, bring in their audiences. I think that's one. Yeah. So I think it's how do you triple down on each of these mediums? You won't win all of them, right? The podcast goes somewhere, or maybe the newsletter doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, and we've learned that too. It's you have 1 to 3 at best, amazing channels that drive repeatable growth, right? As you know. And then it's okay, when you find those 1 to 3 channels, what do? Do you just you keep adding more channels, or do you double down? That's the question.
This is the thing, right? The home runs that I've seen in DigitalOcean where there was the main channel. The main channel was going to be around how we wrote great content and brought people in. And listen, we spent a good amount of money market, then paying ads to see those customers and see how that would play out. But it was still a small part of the marketing mix, even when we were scaling it to events, which are hard to see.
Short-term ROI.
Yeah, it's trickier to measure, and it doesn't scale the same way in terms of page views. It's the ROIs. It's trickier, different type of trickier attribution. So it was always that. And then Grafana it was really the same thing. What was the distribution channel? The channel was build great open source software, build a community that lived on our site, which is around, we had a community around people could submit their own dashboards for others to find and build plugins. The docs would live there. And it was this great cycle. Build good software. People would visit the site. Then we had their attention, and then we can sort of go through. And again, we tried a bunch of different places, whether it be paid, we did events, but there's 1 or 2, specifically one main tried and true channel. And boy, you're lucky if you ever find one, right? So I think it's always tricky to figure out how we're going to expand maybe into another. So yeah, that's another long lesson, just learned multiple times now is do everything you can to pour as much gas, even when you're starting to find diminished returns, right? You should just trying all the sorts of different ways to slice it. So it's when something's working, I think as a growth person, that is your job. 1, to try and find the channels and find the things that work, no doubt. And then there's also how do we pour as much gas on this thing?
Yeah.
Right. In many different ways to see it play out.
In DigitalOcean, we kind of hit a wall where we weren't adding more traffic or signups by adding, writing more tutorials. But I believe when we bought CSS Tricks and other content sites, it actually added additional audiences and additional awareness that drove more acquisition.
That's right.
And that is, I love using that story because it's a great example of diving in and digging in deeper. It's sure, you can hire more content writers, but how, think bigger. How are you actually going to scale your audience and content and community? And it's well, why not buy the other community that exists?
That's right. I use this example all the time as well. And I remember in particular where the light bulb went out for me was our friend Andy proposed, I believe it was him, that we go to acquire this project that was running on DigitalOcean. I think it was asking for credits, this nginx config.io. It was just a widget. It was literally just a simple UI to build a config file for an nginx server. And it was generating tens of thousands of visits every month just to this little widget. And it was we had a powered by DigitalOcean. I think it was and we wanted to figure out how we could just put it more on brand, et cetera. And yeah, we went out and acquired, the company project. And then it was how do we do 5 more of those, right? And then we started doing bigger and bigger things. And yeah, but it did still come from the same idea. It was one to write the content, but the other was people are finding these widgets.
I didn't know that. I didn't know the story of Andy, finding that widget. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Andy Hattemer, by the way, he's the VP of marketing at a company I invested in, actually, Vantage. Just joined that crew. Former DO founders. Pretty exciting. Founders that came from DigitalOcean, I should say.
Yep. Okay.
Ben and Brooke. So shout out to Vantage. Let's dive in, like click in like a couple. Speaking of like diving in deeper, let's go back to the Attribution Sucks idea. Like, let's come up with some let's go with that campaign theme. What are so you mentioned like a billboard that's going to cost me probably like tens of thousands of dollars, but that's okay. Let's talk about, you know, what we should test, right? Because I'm like dead serious. I'm actually going to run this. Like, do we run like, you know, meta ads? Do we run, you know, billboards? Like, how would you get this campaign slogan out?
I would maybe put two things in parallel, right? So like just a few different ideas, right? I think it's maybe more than one. So like one is, if I were you, I would be like going out on all the relevant conversations going on LinkedIn. Just like going in and commenting on any thread that's related around anything around attribution, right? So like commenting, like building up your own following right out of the gate. Like you just like see it working. Like you've sort of seen it across a bunch of these different spaces. So I'd like figure out how are you like going to go after like the social angle? If and where is there like an SEO angle? And then where's the paid, right? I think that I would like kind of try and surround it because I think maybe any given one thing could be tricky. And it's different level of effort or dollars, right? One's like sweat and one is dollars. Yeah. So I would be like kind of going on LinkedIn, looking for all the topics that folks are getting in around product-led growth and sales, right? Where people are talking about attribution. And I'd be like jumping into those threads and talking very specific, interjecting your opinion on the challenge of X, Y, and Z, right? So I think it's important. That's going to build you up. That's going to increase your your specific brand. I think that's one. I'd probably be developing a landing page that like I don't know, very specifically is Attribution Sucks or something.
Yep,
right? And where it's good. It's the class. Yeah. It's like, it'll be like the classic HubSpot model of like, help me understand my attribution. Like how are you going to build like a widget to help you figure out like, where does my attribution suck? It's going to be like your quiz, or maybe it's even installing your JavaScript on there that maybe helps you run side by side. I think that part we'd have to tease out a little bit. But to like something that's going to help them understand how much their attribution sucks compared to like best in class or something like that.
Maybe make a funny video.
That's right.
Like you ever see those? I posted this on X one time. Like you ever see this like meme of you know, like the marketing team, and it's like you have like the gray haired like marketer, like that's just like holding up like a white, you know, basically like sign in the conference room. It's like, you know, show me your marketing plan. It's like completely blank for like next quarter.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, where does your best, like what's working the best for marketing right now? Or like what's, it's just like a blank.
Yeah. I know that. Yep. Yeah. You could auto-generate a meme. You could like auto-generate a series of memes as a result of what comes out of people filling this out, right? Have it branded on the bottom right of source app, right?
You could also use the source R, you know, is like an arrow that points back to the source, and attribution has an R in it. So you could put the source R in there.
Yeah, I think the getting someone to like touch and feel to see, you know, where this might plug in and help them either understand where there's current gaps in their attribution. Like it's like maybe one, I think like an important part. So if we're saying, hey, attribution sucks, make sure they know why.
Yeah.
Right? And maybe that's through some sort of, you know, I think like the surface level idea is to like get them to fill out a bunch of questions. That helps them understand, that benchmarks them against, you know, is best.
Let me ask you a question. Why does attribution suck for you, or has sucked for you?
Just hard. Well, it's just hard because it's like
just put this clip on the ad. It's just hard.
It doesn't. Sorry, like there's parts that's hard. Like here's where it's hard. Coming like Modal, coming like Grafana, people hear about us from all the different places, right? They didn't hear about us from one place. We're surrounding people, right? People are hearing from word of mouth. The word on the street is Modal. It's a cool place. If you're a machine learning engineer and you need a serverless way to run training jobs, run inference, etc. That was the word on the street at DigitalOcean. We had our own version and it was Grafana. So there's just like so many ways people sort of hear about you, right? So then it becomes very tricky to be like, well, when 50% of our traffic is organic, or direct, or 65%, whatever, it's going to be very, very high, especially among developers where people are blocking all sorts of cookies, etc. It becomes really hard to sort of tease out, you know, what do we want to give credit to at the end of the day? You know, first touch, last touch, you know, first visit to the site, whatever those UTMs were, last one, etc. Then we need to, if you're offering promo codes, right? As an example, so maybe you came in direct, but maybe you apply a promo code when you first sign up. Then we need to build an override. So there's just like this ongoing series of logic that we always have to tease out, like, because we know most people nowadays are coming in direct, organic in some capacity, especially in developer tools generally. So then you have to come up with lots and lots of if-then statements to decide where do we want to give credit. We're going to ask them during onboarding. And it's just like this constant thing of whack-a-mole to figure out where are people coming. And then the tricky part is how do you tie it all the way downstream to, stage 1 opportunity, stage 2 revenue, so on and so forth. And that's just non-trivial for what it's worth, right? You have to have someone like a data engineer. Mm-hmm. We happen to have like a full-time data engineer who spends time on a lot of things. This is one of them. And it was the same thing when we were at Grafana. We had a data organization that we just had to invest lots of humans and time to be sophisticated in this. And that's the part that sucks, is that, like, especially early on, it's like the last problem you want to solve.
Yep.
Generally speaking, you just hope things should work. And that's the part that's hard, I think, especially nowadays where the channels are bleeding into each other because it's hard to track things on the internet. How do we sort of think about the proper page view, campaign, promo code, first interaction at the product level? I think that's like one piece, is like the top of the funnel part of it. And then it's, what about 3, 6, 9 months later? Mm-hmm. How do we look at it? And that's what's hard. And then so either using humans or you're using shitty tools, like you're having to figure out how to use Salesforce to track you leads and contacts tied to campaigns. It's just like a total disaster.
Yep, it is. And who do you think should own attribution? You think the data team should own attribution in companies?
I think it depends where you're at on it. It sort of depends on the scale, how big the company is. DigitalOcean, we had a centralized data and analytics team.
Yep.
That I think ultimately owned a lot of this, and as a centralized org, and like the marketing leaders would partner with that team on things. Grafana was a little different. Grafana was very decentralized in nature, but just given we were an open source company, sort of would empower teams with their own resources to solve the problems quickly. And we had like sort of decentralized team analysts at first, and then we eventually moved to like data engineering. So I don't know, that was a little somewhere in the spectrum of centralized and decentralized. And here, Modal's still relatively young. So I think it's still in the mix. Ownership is, it's sort of not the concern at this point. But it really depends. I think it really depends on the humans involved. That's one thing I really took away from my experience at Grafana. If you got the right competent person, if you got the right marketing leader, like a very analytically oriented growth marketing leader, I think that's fine, right?
Yep.
Assuming they're not trying to cook their own books. I think there's value in having like RevOps or some sort of analytics function to it.
Yeah, I think, I've heard about this use case, like having like a BigQuery database that, maybe via API or something, like you can plug into Source to basically, if you're a data science team, you can pull out the attribution data and centralize it if you want. I think that probably is a great, use case solution down the road, especially targeting like large organizations that centralize their data in one group.
That's right.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's right. And it's just like tricky because I do think there's like value. I think when you're trying to build it, one of many things that are uniquely valuable is when things end up in the data warehouse and they get put onto like some Looker dashboard or Hex, like whatever it is, some sort of BI. Like, because this is like disconnected from the day to day of the person running paid or person writing content, and like there is value of just like, give me the right tool and widget for the person who's on the front lines doing the work, which is maybe different than how you're rolling up attribution to like your CMO or the CEO, right? Like there's like putting the tools in the hands of the actual end marketers, I think is valuable. In addition to like, you want centralized data analytics or engineering team do it. I don't know. There's like an interesting balance to strike there. Cause I think sometimes when you if you put the tools into some sort of maybe that are not the right ergonomics for like the end marketer, it's a little tricky. And I think that's actually like one of the things that you're ultimately, I believe you're on the path to building is like, the data engineering, data science teams might need it for sure, right? Especially if you're a bigger company and everything sort of lives in a data warehouse, for sure. But then there's also like at the end user marketers, like there's 1,000 point solutions inside of businesses for a good reason, because people like need access to the tools that help them make informed decisions on the fly.
And that's the key part. It's like real time. Like, I remember asking the data team, like, hey, can you put together a report for me, to see X, Y, and Z? Oh, sure. Let's add it to the pipeline, to the queue. basically of requests.
That's right.
And then you're on you're basically going to the deli counter, taking a ticket and waiting in line, to get that report. And it's like, by the time you access the report, it's like you lost the energy, the inertia, the momentum, to like attack that solution or problem or channel. And it's like, it's better, to your point. It's like better to have that real time information.
That's right. And like, it's because there's a lot of ways to cut this, right? Like there's one thing if you want to go back to the CMO or to the board or CEO and just be like, here's our attribution model. It's like first touch or last touch or like it can get really complicated. And I think that's a way to like help the folks spending budgets, allocating resources to think about how do we invest our resources appropriately, maybe given this blended view of the world at the end of the day, right? And by the way, which makes a ton of sense. Yet the person working on paid, as an example, spending $30,000 a month doing X, or the person who's like a content manager trying to figure out, where we spend our time doing X, Y, and Z, they actually need to cut this a whole bunch of different ways. They might be less concerned about like, did I get 0.1%, 1/10 of the credit for some ad or for some piece of content, but they probably would find it very interesting to say like, oh, this article that I wrote, this how-to, forget about like, it only got 1/10 of the credit for this important opportunity downstream, but holy shit, that's like 1/10 of credit for a lot of our articles. And it turns out it's an important step of the journey of anyone doing research on our brand. And like, I don't know, a lot of times you need to know how to write SQL or something in order to like maybe get that level of detail. If you have a sophisticated, data engineering team, maybe you get on their queue for sure, or you have to figure out yourself. But like actually the people at the end of the day just like need access to a way to like help them make good decisions on an hourly basis, not like a 3-month planning process.
That's right. That's right. And those, just for context too, for the audience, like we found through multi-touch attribution at DigitalOcean that around 70% of all customers landed on a tutorial before they converted, which is a crazy, crazy number. It just goes to show you like how effective content was at top of funnel for DigitalOcean in driving awareness. And we were bringing in millions of visits to the website per month. And, at the time, there was only, 30 million developers globally, software developers globally. So it was a very large percentage of market saturation that we were able to achieve every single month. And that just compounded. Another interesting stat, by the way, I was watching a keynote at GitHub's Octoverse, Universe, their conference. Yeah. And with AI now, this is wild. This is going to blow your mind. With AI now, can you guess how many like software developers exist in the world now from 30 million when we were at DigitalOcean?
It's a big number, and you'll say in a second, but I was listening to some podcast the other day with Satya where he was talking about it was a crazy number of developers joining, or new accounts being created on GitHub every minute. It was like a wild number. What was the number?
It's 100. It was something like 180 million from 30 million.
That's a big number.
Just like not even like that long ago, like a few years ago, basically.
Yeah.
Like maybe it was like
6 years ago.
Like pre-AI, it was like 35 maybe at best.
Yeah.
180 million. So like I say, it's like being in the dev tool space right now is a good place to be. And also very promising for like, companies that cater to software engineers. But it was a wild stat. Like just to build an app now is like, you literally don't know, you don't need to know how to code. You could just prompt a large language model, sign up for GitHub, deploy it to a repo, and you have an app. It's wild. All right. So going back to the attribution sucks idea.
Yes.
So let's pick 3. So Mitch goes on LinkedIn and all the different Reddit threads and comments on every single attribution sucks post and talks about attribution. That's 1. 2 is come up with an attribution sucks landing page that's like basically a manifesto page, ultimately, of like why attribution sucks, why we're building source, and maybe post a video, a funny video, and talk about how attribution is the worst. That's 2. 3rd is billboard in San Francisco. Billboard in San Francisco. What's
no, not now.
That's the paid play.
I thought this was a safe space for brainstorming.
It is. No, by the way, it is like
Yeah, I'm kidding.
No, I'm not even kidding you. I'm gonna like look online after this. Like Outfront, obviously, is like one of the biggest like billboard media platforms. And if there is a billboard in SF or something, maybe I'll like point that billboard to that manifesto page, and there you go.
I don't know if sucks is a top level domain or not. If you did like attribution.sucks.
There you go. That's another one.
I don't know if it's a top level one or not though. And then like I think there is something interesting that we'd have to like refine a bit more of like how you can get folks to either like quickly run. Like I think there's like that product led growth component of this of how could you find a way to let folks very quickly do a bake off, like evaluate their analytics, right? And is it by running the source JavaScript, right? Like I assume you're like in it, like you'll eventually integrate with all some of the like whether it be like Rudderstack or Segment or something to make it easy to deploy as an example, and like what you might be able to tell them, or is there some sort of just like, quiz survey, something that like helps folks just like get a quick benchmark to understand, like to pull out of people how that the problems are. Like here's what I think. I think most people realize it doesn't work. I think, but if you ask lots of other marketers why it's hard or doesn't work, they might not have like intellectually considered the challenges there enough, or maybe you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
So like, could you almost make them aware of that, how much the problem is?
Yeah. Like where do you get your attribution today? Like, oh, we just ask our customers like how they heard about us. Like you hear that a lot.
Oh yeah. And what do they remember? Yeah. I mean, there's a whole blog post side note, whole blog post you could write just on that topic.
Oh yeah.
On just like why that's good, why that's bad. How would you integrate that with the rest of your attribution strategy? Bam. Number one, done.
Yep.
It's gonna be a hit.
I think it's gonna be a hit. I think you have a real shot at the Ferrari. Listen, I'm not even like kidding. Like if this actually like, let's say we're 50 episodes down the road, 100 episodes down the road, Source is doing, I don't know, 10 million ARR at that point. Like, the hell with it. $300,000 Ferrari. What does it matter at that point? It's part of the marketing budget.
300,000 between friends. That's great.
But it'll be branded Source. Have like the Source. We'll put like a little logo,
yes,
not like a huge one, like a little one, just like tiny, just a little nod on it.
Love it.
Cool. We talked about it. We talked about a ton. We have like 10 minutes left. Is there anything you want to leave the audience with? Anything that we didn't bring up that you want to chat about?
Talked about attribution sucks.
Yeah.
It needs to be solved, right? And it's the age of AI and we still haven't solved it, right? So I think
that's right.
It's the right time to be building this to kind of rethink. I think it's like the other like just, comment around that is I think it's only even more so some of the challenges here. It was like, it's just like the interesting shift of just like more and more queries and traffic, and that slowly over time will start coming from, the answer engines and, ChatGPT and Gemini and all those other types of things is like just an interesting sea change and from an attribution perspective, how that will play out. So I think you're building it like an interesting time that is the case. Not to mention just like how much traffic is going to start to be just like agents and bots. Like even, again, we're on the same path we've been that like a tremendous percentage of the internet has just been bots for a long time. But I think now they're like maybe smarter bots because they're agents. We'll see how this plays out. So I just think there's like an interesting change going on about how people are looking and researching and buying software that you're starting to build in this space. And I think you're taking it in the right way of just like kind of building with teams and trying to figure out where that right wedge is going to be. So I think there's like a lot to watch here. And obviously that's,
tons. And then the other flip side is like, will software even be needed in the future? That's like the other flip side to all this, which is like, what do you need software for down the road? If basically AI is going to be doing everything for you and you have robots and it's like, you really don't even need to like lift a finger. Like what is the use of, building software at that point? Now, is it just to run the robots? Is it just to run the machines? Is it just to run the AI at that point? I don't know.
So that's what I'm having. My girls are going to be professional golf and soccer players.
Seriously. I mean, like, and like, it's going to be interesting to see the trends of like, I mean, here's I have a crazy theory on this. Like, I think down the road that like, it's going to be almost like a Terminator type of episode of like everything's going to be abstracted away. The internet's going to be abstracted away, and it's all going to be kind of like robots and AI living in their own world. And then we're going to be living in our own world of like offline interaction, and then there's going to be like a war of worlds where like we kind of like collide in the middle. Like I don't know. Like it's kind of scary to think like people are going to value more and more like real human interaction. Like you just went back to the office, like offline experiences, like playing sports or, you know, I don't know, going for runs and like not being plugged into your phone 24/7. I don't know. It's going to be really interesting how the world kind of shifts over time. But yeah, like if you want to be like an associate at a law firm, like probably not a good idea to go to law school for that. There's a ton of jobs that are going to be completely obsolete down the road.
Yeah. Yeah, that is some dystopian future you're painting.
Yeah, that's right. Homes will be relevant. Real estate will be relevant. You know, buying real estate. Like people need to live in a home, so that'll still exist.
Yeah, I think timescales matter. Over what time? I think it'll be the question. So, but in the meantime, until all that happens, I do think there is like an evolution going on that is going to be required at a minimum, just from the shift of, you know. And if it's not in the next 12 months, it's within the next 24 months around how much traffic comes from these, you know, answer engines to, you know, how agents will play a role in doing research and understanding, like just looking at traffic and understand, like, I just think there will be things that continue to evolve here.
Big time.
That feels like it's like the right spot as there's like a shift with it's unclear what comes out the other end of this.
Yep.
I think starting to play in this universe at this time is interesting.
Super interesting.
So yeah, that's why I was pumped to hear you working on this.
Thanks, man. Thanks. And I'm also like, I know we have like a couple minutes left, but like the more kind of I think about Source as like just a marketing attribution tool, like I don't think marketing attribution is the right position for it. I think it should be more like revenue attribution.
Yes.
Which I think feels way more relevant and valuable for companies than just marketing. You know, like if I'm a CEO, if I'm like someone in the company other than marketing that's like looking to buy into this, like marketing attribution is not that exciting compared to like revenue attribution.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you know, coming from a lot of the product-led growth side, you know, a lot of times marketing and self-service start to go really hand in hand, right? Like the e-commerce checkout, right, is sort of like, and that's what I think that was the bread and butter at DigitalOcean, right? Because it was very, you know, no one says e-commerce anymore, but right, it was just like people swipe your credit card and you'd spend. So you could like quickly get that marketing attribution and, you know, the revenue were very tightly coupled. But to your point, yeah, when I look at what's going on here at Modal, the universe at Grafana, attribution gets even harder when it's not just done through e-com, like done via the website in a self-serve way. When you have reps involved, huge offline things like events going on, it's just a much murkier and more challenging picture. Like that gets that gets not weaponized. That's the word I mean to use, but like you start to be able to allow various folks inside a business, especially at scale, like as a company starting to scale, tell their own story about how this deal landed or where this came from, right? And I think that's an interesting space to play in as well, right? Of like
big time. The offline component of like meeting someone at an event, entering their contact information in a CRM, like how do you attribute that, you know? And like how do you track that at scale? Like that's all those things are just tough, you know, super tough.
Yeah. It's right. It's like a lot of these things are very hard in the beginning, right? To get going, which I think is one of the things you sounds like you're going to be building and thriving towards. Like, how do you kind of go from 0 to 1 in a way that is genuinely useful, right? And then as you sort of get to the other end of the scale, it starts to become particularly challenging. And that's not to say the middle isn't, but like I think there's an interesting way to serve this both at like the very early part and especially as you get further on with once you get to scale with, you know, lots of reps and salespeople and events and like, you know, the online meets offline, both from a marketing perspective, but also where the transaction happens, when the transaction is just like driven through, you know, Salesforce opportunities, you know, and that's where everything's tracked. And all of a sudden, all the web activity goes away. These are like trickier lines to draw, right? This is where attribution becomes particularly tricky. Excuse me, the revenue attribution. Yeah.
Yep. Revenue attribution. Attribution Sucks. You heard it first here from Dave Dorman. That is our first campaign initiative that we're running at Source. We're going to test it out, see how it performs. We're going to recap it back on a future episode, see how it does. I'll do my best. I'll see how many threads I could comment on over from now until then. But excited to put that into play and Dave, thanks for joining episode 1 of the Growth Journal. It's an honor.
Thanks for having me.
It's an honor, man. It's an honor to have you on, and again, to see your growth and to see how much you've accomplished, and you're just getting started. It's pretty wild. So congrats.
Well, yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, the feeling I've said it to a bunch of folks who have ever been willing to listen. I'm like, Mitch found me, Mitch and team found me, put me in a spot to succeed, and I'm like, always forever grateful. So I was like pumped to, one, just go on this and do this with you, and two, be the first. So I'm a big fan of yours, and let me know. I'd love to keep figuring out how to help, and hopefully this campaign works.
Yes. Hopefully it does, and you win that Ferrari.
Lovely. All right, brother. Talk to you soon. All right.
Cheers.